Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Lovely to meet you all. I suppose you have all been doing these master classes already, so you probably know uh, all the housekeeping. If you want to put a question in the chat, you can do that. I think you can put your hand up and stuff as well. We can do that. If you can keep your mics off, that would be lovely. Lena sent me a WhatsApp before this masterclass to say that fortunately the passing of some of your friends. So I just put in the chat there some music that I've been listening to recently. Sandy B, very funky stuff. Sometimes you can let the body talk as well. So if you feel like having a dance later on, please do so, because we're dancers, we're artists. Right. I'm gonna crack on because I got you for 45 minutes and then you're off. So I'm gonna start with the art of applications. Let me share my screen. There you go. Look at that. From the beginning. Here we go. There it is. Yeah, so good. All right, the art of applications. Who's this guy? It's Tony Mills, artistic director of Dance Space. So give you a little bit of context, because context is everything. So I work for Dance Space. We're Scotland's national centre for dance. We've been around for over 20 years. We're right in the heart of Edinburgh, underneath a castle. We've got 4 main areas of activity that include public classes, or everything from Bollywood to ballet and hip hop and Highland. And we have a program for Dance for Health, Wellbeing and Engagement, and that's who Emma leads. So you met Emma before. We have an international platform where we invite dance companies from around the world to come and perform in Edinburgh during the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August. But what I'm going to kind of base a lot of my talk to today with you on is our professional program. So we spend a lot of time supporting professional artists to develop their careers, to develop their ideas, and support their trajectory as artists, basically. Okay, it's a really important program in Scotland. It's very significant and it has a lot of impact. We support artists from all over Scotland, all genres, all stages of career. We develop national and international connections like this one, you guys in Colombia. We distribute up to £50,000 a year. That goes out to artists across Scotland for all kinds of projects that we initiate. We've got wonderful studios that you can see in the picture down there that people love to come and dance in. Maybe you will dance there one day, who knows? And we do lots of artist development projects, okay? So when I'm talking to you today, I'm talking through the lens of our context, all right? Specifically dance and specifically dance development. But hopefully some of the things will be relevant to you, even if you're not really doing dance productions, or maybe you're doing events or community projects and things like that, okay? So I'm going to talk to you about common problems that I encounter as artistic director when I'm reading applications, okay? When we put out an opportunity. So this is your idea. It's amazing. It's new. It's wonderful. It's going to change the world. So you apply to an opportunity with your idea. But suddenly all these things start getting in the way, starts becoming confusing. You're not being specific enough, not talking about your artistic process. And after a while, it's really impossible to kind of know what your idea is really about, because all this other stuff is in the way. So what we're hopefully going to try and do today is give you some idea about how to get all that stuff out of the way so we can see and read about or watch your lovely idea and then support it. So one of the common things that people do, okay, that I find when I'm reading applications is they generalize, yeah? They're not specific enough. So I'm going to give you a little example. This is something I made up, okay? The world has felt the effects of isolation like never before. I want to make a show that explores this subject, and I will use this residency to develop movement ideas and work with new collaborators. Audiences and communities will then be able to connect with the themes and feel like they are less alone. Okay, that's somebody's, application, their, application for an opportunity. From this, it's really easy to tell what is this person's motivation. It's all about isolation. That's the big problem they're trying to solve. That's the question they're trying to answer. That's what they're obsessed about. Okay, great. But unfortunately, within this application, they don't tell us how. All right, they don't say anything about how they're going to explore the theme of isolation. They don't tell us how they're going to connect with those communities. How do they imagine they will even build those relationships if they don't have them in the first place? And then they don't say anything about how they think they will develop movement ideas. That's not enough just to say you will develop something. We need to know how you might do it. And they don't say who they're going to work with. Who are these collaborators that are going to contribute to their show? Why are they going to work with them? What qualities will they bring? Okay. It's really important to be more specific. If you have the information, then share it. Don't be general. It's just too confusing and it's just too vague. So identity is another subject that comes up a lot when we read applications. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about your characteristics, your background, where you live, how you identify, race, gender, that kind of thing. This is really important. It's important to talk about your uniqueness as an artist and why perhaps because of certain characteristics, you may be underrepresented and you should maybe get this opportunity. That's really true, okay? But it shouldn't just be the only justification for applying to an opportunity, okay? It is nice when you read applications that talk a little bit more about how your identity actually informs your practice. How your identity, all these kind of characteristics that make up who you are, inform the way you approach your work. Okay. So, for example, we receive a lot of applications in this kind of format where artists talk an awful lot about their identity, religion, gender, socioeconomic class, etc. And that is kind of their argument for their art, okay? But what is much more interesting, okay, is where the identity feeds into someone's artistic process. And that is which leads to their art. Because your identity, where you live, how you identify, etc., it is going to form part of how you make your work. So talk about that. That's really interesting. I'm mentioning artistic process. So for me, I would describe this as in the way you develop your ideas from conception to realization. Okay. Imagine you, a person in the world, absorbing all the things around you that life is bringing you. That is causing you to react in some way and develop these ideas about how you want to respond, what you want to say, and that becomes your art. Okay. This is the kind of journey your artistic process goes through. So when we're talking about artistic process, this is the kind of thing we would like you to describe, okay? Sometimes if you're an experienced artist, no problem. But if you're a new artist, you're an emerging artist, okay, you might not actually know, well, what is my artistic process? I can tell you that you're already doing it, but you just need to learn how to describe it. So artistic process kind of comprises of, I would say, about 4 things, okay? So I'll mention 3 first of all. There's, first of all, your motivation, like the big why do you do what you do? What are you as an artist obsessed with? What do you love? What are you question are you trying to answer? What is it you want to solve? Okay. This is an important driving force in dictating how you will develop your artistic process. Okay. Next is your trajectory. Where is it that you want to go? Okay. With yourself, with your work. What is your ambition? What is it that you want to change? What is the kind of impact you want your work to have? Whatever impact you want your work to have is also going to influence the kind of artistic process you're going to use. Okay. And then we talk about, again, identity. All those characteristics, your background, your history, and how that feeds into how you approach your work. Now, when I read applications, I see a lot of this, but I see very little, unfortunately, of artistic tools and methods. The actual how, okay? It's many artists spend a lot of time talking about motivation, trajectory, identity, but fail to really tell the reader or the viewer about kind of how they will do what they will do. What are the tools and the techniques and the approaches that is unique to them and their style and their background that they're going to apply in order to realize some of these ideas. So this is really important to include when you're writing applications, in my opinion. So I'm talking about here sometimes a lack of information. A lot of information about motivation, about identity, too much generalization, and not enough artistic process. And it's the artistic process we kind of want to hear about, okay? I want to say very clearly that it's important to talk about being underrepresented, okay? That really matters if you're an artist from a particular region or a particular ethnicity or something like that. That is important to talk about and make it known. Equally, it's equally important to talk about why something you do is unique. Maybe you are a traditional dance artist and only you and your community dance that particular form. That's really important to say, okay? That gives a lot of urgency and need to your application. What if you're an artist who works with communities and the work you do changes lives? Again, talk about that. That's really valuable. But what is really exciting is to talk about all of this and tell us about your process. Tell us about the art. Tell us about the making, okay? The magic. The magic brings all of that alive, okay? And without it, applications are more likely to fail. So really, as I'm saying, tell us more, okay? How might you do what you say? We understand, if I'm reading an application, I understand that not every artist is going to know exactly what they're going to do when they get in the studio, because it's a creative exploration. But I do believe that an artist should have a rough idea about where they want to go. They might not know how, but they know, I want to go in that direction. So tell us about that. Tell us about that sense. Tell us about those initial ideas if you don't know the full journey. And again, talk about tools, methods, choreographic processes. Why you, what you will use and why it's relevant. Why even dance? Why is dance the language for this show or this idea? It's important to ask yourself these questions, if not actually put them in an application, okay? One thing I see a lot of is a line, I will develop the choreography, okay? So the word develop really tells us nothing at all. It doesn't tell us how you will develop that choreography. It doesn't say anything about the kind of tools or genre or style or technique or anything about what you're going to do, okay? And so we're left with not enough information. If you're going to develop the choreography, it means that something existed already and you want to create something else. So what was missing in the first place? That could be interesting to talk about. And then what will be different when you have developed the choreography? So what is it that you imagine? And remember, it's a human being who is going to be reading your application. I know it's obvious, right? But we kind of forget that. We forget that we are talking to other people, okay? And those other people have feelings and senses just like you do. They have ambitions and dreams just like you do. And they are looking for inspiration just like you are. So as a creative individual, who is imagining all these things, dance shows, events, making music, creating costume, whatever, you can probably feel that and you can probably see it and you can probably imagine how it might feel and what someone would experience. So don't be afraid to talk about that as well. Okay, don't be afraid to try and excite the people who will read your applications or who will watch your videos or however you will apply to an opportunity. Using language that includes things like texture and sound and color and shapes and things like that can really help to paint a picture about what it is that you are trying to do. Okay, and that can be really valuable and that will resonate with people. But if you have no idea whatsoever about what your idea is going to look like or what your aims are, perhaps you can provide some examples. Perhaps you can provide some examples of other artists, other people whose work that you really like, that's the kind of work that you want to make. Okay, that can help to give someone an idea of the kind of proposal that you're putting forward. Okay, so in the end, folks, we're looking for a kind of balanced representation of you, the artist. Okay, not too much about your motivation, not too much about why you're underrepresented, and enough information about your process and your actual artistic kind of tools and methods that you're going to use. Okay, remember, you are unique, aren't you? I think so. I hope so. So your art is unique. So why be talk about it in general, non-specific, vague, grand terms? Just be specific, okay? Be authentic. Try and paint that picture of what you imagine. Try to spark our imagination through how you present your application, all right? Ask yourself, when you read your application, am I talking about something too much or am I talking about it too little? All right. And practice, practice, practice. I have been thinking about what is lacking in our sector in Scotland. What does our dance industry here kind of need? And I've realized it needs, there's a lot of things it needs, but one of the things it needs is opportunities to talk, okay? Talking about your work, critiquing your work. This is important. It is a part of figuring out what it is you're actually about, what it is you're trying to say. Get into conversations about your work, talking through your artistic process, um, swapping ideas around tools and techniques and things like that. It's important to keep talking about it, okay? It gets easier, trust me. The next area of applications where sometimes artists don't do so well is artistic development, okay? Often opportunities, certainly the opportunities we offer are mostly about someone's artistic development, how their career is going to progress, how they're going to gain new skills and new opportunities from this. So as we've written here, how will this opportunity impact your career? What most people are looking for here are clear outcomes, okay? What do you imagine is going to be the outcome of your work, okay, of this opportunity? How will it impact you? What change will it make? And it doesn't matter if your plan is to do, I just want 1 week in the studio to play and mess around, or I just want 1 week in the studio because I've got a big event that is booked and I just need the space to rehearse it, okay? It's just about clearly articulating what that outcome is and what the impact will be for yourself or the people you work with. You can also talk about, as I mentioned before, the kind of skills you will gain. Why is this a good fit for you? Well, it's going to improve my ability to work with others. I'm going to learn more about event production. I'm going to improve my skills as a dancer, okay? How will this opportunity improve your skills and your capacity as an artist? And who will benefit? Obviously, I hope you will benefit, but perhaps your colleagues will benefit. Perhaps your community will benefit. Perhaps older people will benefit, okay? So it's useful to talk about who will benefit from the result if you get in this opportunity. Ultimately, you're trying to create the best argument you can to justify being given the opportunity. Okay, that's what you're trying to craft when you write an application. But what you have to remember, folks, is that it's not just you also making that argument. It's your colleagues and your friends and other people in other cities around the same country who are also making the same argument to arts councils and funders and people who offer opportunities. And those people who are offering those opportunities are looking back at the whole sector and seeing all of those needs as well. So it gets very competitive. It's very competitive here in Scotland. I'm sure it's pretty competitive in Colombia as well. I can see that a lot of the people and the projects on the Creative Bootcamp are very socially engaged. So a lot of people championing their values and their impact on what they do and how they're meeting needs, okay? So sometimes it is very competitive. It is your need versus the needs of all the other artists. Someone who is first time, never had an opportunity before, versus someone who is an experienced artist, someone who is underrepresented versus somebody who is not so underrepresented. So yes, it's very important to talk about those qualities and those needs. And I can say that in Scotland, this happens a lot. People talking loudly about their needs more and more and more and more, okay? But really, what we're hoping to get is an application that articulates a strong need and rationale, but with a very clear artistic concept and idea, which is informed by those things that I talked about before: identity, motivation, and your process. Really, we're trying to look for a nice balance between the two when presented with your application. Don't worry, we're going to have a break soon, I think. There'll be some questions. And just remember, when you are applying to a cultural organization, that cultural organization is thinking of your needs as the artist. They're also thinking about the needs of the sector, and they're also thinking about their own needs. Everyone has needs. And if an organization has needs, then it's a really good idea to find out what those needs are, to do a little bit of research if you're not sure, if you're not familiar, because, you want to be a good match. And if you found out you're a good match, go for it. And don't forget, okay, it's not just a one-way conversation, okay? An organization that offers an opportunity should give you, the artist, a very clear criteria. You should know how your application is going to be judged, okay? And if that's not happening, then I would encourage you to give them some feedback. Okay, it's good for you and it's good for them. Any questions? I will look in the chat. I don't know. I've got a little bit more to go, but if there's some questions, I can take some. Jonathan.
Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. My question is, what would be those steps to be able to position an international organization? Maybe you already have that national organization, but what steps could you take to be able to obtain that support to position internationally your organization?
Right, big question. I think, first of all, one needs to have the capacity to be able to operate in the international arena. So that means you have your artist, maybe your choreographer, director. For sure, you need a producer as well. You can't be the artist slash producer and be really effective in an international arena. So that producer, in terms of the division of labor, first of all, you need to have that staff, okay, those resources, those personnel resources to be able to manage both your work at home and any international kind of connections and sort of activity that you might be interested in facilitating. I would say that it is important to try and be where the action is. I'll give you an example. If you were in Europe and you were a dance artist, you're a dance company or a dance producer, then you would want to be at Tanzmesse. Now, Tanzmesse is a large, some of you may know, but Tanzmesse is a large industry get-together that happens in August every 2 years. And pretty much everyone, mostly in kind of Western Europe and in the East and other parts of the world, if they're into dance, they're all at Tanzmesse. You cannot expect international activity to happen if you're not meeting people with the same ambitions, who can help facilitate that kind of activity. So if it's about building international profile, perhaps there's opportunity to either build up financial reserves or apply for funding to visit these kind of international dance platforms. If you live in Colombia, then it's probably not a bad idea to try the kind of Western American networks. There's networks of dance producers in the West of America, also up in Canada as well, those networks that are close by that run industry events. Sorry, I'm talking fast here. For example, there would be, this is my last thing on this, there would be CNARS, which takes place in Montreal, which is a large industry event, and that would be something interesting to get to. The first thing to do is to get to those events, I think, and then the conversations can happen. So it's about raising some capital, it's about applying for funding for just one person to travel to these kind of events, which shouldn't be too difficult. Should I carry on? See, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to close this. Probably not going to finish. Anyway, boom. Let me go back. Okay. Other reasons why applications just do not pass. They are poorly resourced. That's your proposal. You've submitted it, but you haven't given yourself enough time to do what you say you were going to do. You don't have enough personnel, like I've just talked about. You don't have a producer to do the job that you need to do. And you don't have enough money. You haven't budgeted for enough money to do the things you say you're going to do. Money is an important issue. Certainly here in Scotland and the UK, there is a strong push for fair pay within the arts. And so standards of pay are increasing quite rapidly. Any applications that aren't really adhering to fair pay aren't successful. I don't know what the situation is like in Colombia, but pay rates are an important thing to consider. So make sure your project is adequately resourced. Shrinking your project. Now, when I was an artist, I used to be a dancer and choreographer. When I would apply for an opportunity, I would try and squeeze my opportunity, my work, my idea into the opportunity. And that meant that I would do that job and that job and that job and that job and all those jobs, okay, in order to save money. And that is called hidden labor, all right? Ultimately, it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. You can do it, but it's not sustainable. I'm sure the financial situation in Colombia for the arts is probably not as good, I don't know, as the UK. But I would encourage you to try and ask for what you need. That is a very difficult thing to do. You have to be very brave. Organizations have to be brave also in responding. It's something we try to do here. So when an artist applies to an opportunity and they underfund themselves or they shrink their project, actually, they don't get funded because we're trying to encourage people to ask for what they need. And I would encourage you, if you can, to do the same. Another common issue, there's a few more of these, your proposal that you write down doesn't really match your budget, okay? So things that exist in your proposal don't kind of appear in your budget. Your ask doesn't equal what it costs. And if that happens, that tells someone who's reading your application that what you say you will do is not what you can achieve. And that means very low confidence in your application, okay? So it's really important that you check that what you write in your proposal can actually be realized in your budget, okay? So that means if you say, I'm going to collaborate with a musician, but then you don't include the musician in your budget, it means that collaboration is not actually going to happen. Or if it does happen, it's going to happen under financial stress. So either way, the project's not getting supported, okay? So make sure your budget allows you to do what you say you will do, okay? And as I mentioned, pay rates are very important. I'm not sure what the situation is in Colombia, but if people aren't paying the adequate rates here in the UK, projects don't get funded. And again, hidden labor. If I'm reading an application and I can see that there's hidden labor in the application will not be funded. Access, again, I'm not sure if this is something that's common in Colombia, but in Scotland, we include this line in a budget called access, and it is money to help someone if they need additional support. So if someone needs childcare, if they need a support worker to come and help them, if they need to get a taxi to the studio every day because they have problems walking, people can apply for access. It might not be something that happens in Colombia, but it could be an interesting thing to think about when you're writing your budget. And as I'm going to put here, numbers don't lie. I'll just do that again. Numbers don't lie. The budget will always tell a story, okay? So if you're writing about your proposal and all the things you're going to do, and if the budget tells a different story, your application is not going to be funded. Urgency. What is that? So sometimes a proposal seems like urgent, like it needs to happen now, okay? And that can be because of various things, like the timing right now in society, for the artist, trajectory, impact, all those kind of things. So it could be that the work is like really significant at this time, okay? So it needs to happen now. So it's urgent. It could be there's a personal circumstance for the artist. Perhaps they are pregnant and they wouldn't be working for a while, or perhaps they're older and need to do it now. You know, there could be, for various reasons, there could be personal circumstances whereby it can make the application more urgent. And of course, trajectory, if there's going to be a really significant impact, then that can be a really strong reason for application to be supported. Or if there's going to be a massive difference to communities or the wider sector, that kind of thing. So it is useful to explain why now, like why now is useful for you, for your work, and for the people in the sector around you. So almost at the end, folks, nearly there. This is the checklist. I'm sure some of you are very experienced, so I apologize if you know all this already, but if you don't, you're in the right place. Yeah, clear and concise artistic concept and idea. Yeah, a good balance between motivation, identity, and process. Not shouting too much about your motivation and the big idea and how you're gonna heal the world, but also talking about what you're gonna do as an artist. What is your artistry? How is your artistry going to heal the world? Well-articulated processes. Okay, be specific. Give the how. Give the who. Especially now. Word count in applications are kind of getting smaller and smaller because there's actually quite a lot of labor on the behalf of the organization to read to read all these applications. So I'm trying to shrink some of the words. So it's good to be specific and rationale for your decisions. Why are you doing what you're doing? Okay, tell us a bit about that. Try to excite the reader. Why not? Your artistic development, the impact on you, your work, communities and sector, essentially just trying to make as strong an argument as possible for why you should get this opportunity, okay? But it's not all about that, remember, it's also about talking about your work as an artist and how you do the things you do and those tools and choreographic processes, etc. Budget, as I mentioned, does it match? If it doesn't, it's not getting funded. Never, okay? So make sure it matches up. Make sure it's adequately resourced, okay? Even if you were successful, you don't really want to be trying to deliver projects under-resourced, under-stressed, half-baked. It's possible, but again, it's not really sustainable for the long term. And fair pay, and then a contingency. It's useful to always include a contingency in your budget, okay? In case things happen, and invariably things do happen. Urgency, have you expressed why now? Do you need to do some research? Have you done a little looking into this organization? Make sure it's the right opportunity for you, okay? Do you need to do a little bit more research on your own project idea? Maybe both. So when you're looking at your applications, read it aloud, okay? It's nice to hear it back. You can hear how it sounds. Ask someone else to take a look at it. Always do get another pair of eyes on your application. Ask questions. If the organization that you're applying to is available and you've got a question about it, ask questions. Don't suffer in silence. And make sure your materials, if you're submitting a video, CV, whatever, make sure it's up to date, make sure it's accessible and not password protected. And please, please, please do not use ChatGPT. It's not good enough yet. People can spot when it's a robot, okay? And always ask for feedback. It's your right, okay? As an artist, get some feedback. And if an organization wouldn't give you feedback, well, they're maybe not an organization you want to work with. Okay. Good luck and enjoy making art. Any questions? Question time, people. Knowledge drop. You're welcome, Jonathan. Took me a long time to make these slides, let me tell you.
Pero te quedaron divinas. We have 100.
But they look great, says Diana. They look great.
Canva. Get Canva, everyone.
Buenas noches, ¿me escuchan?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you hear me?
Yep.
Ok.
What's up, man?
Bueno, muchas gracias por
Thank you very much, Tony,
De nada.
for sharing all this knowledge. As the presentation was unfolding, I was glad to find out that we're on the right path. I really liked it when you talked about the impact of the proposal on the organization itself. How does my proposal impact me, and how should it impact me as an applicant as well as the community, you know? It's always important, it seems, that proposals be coherent with the social situation that the community is living in our context, is experiencing. Basically, where I am unfolding my artistic process, right? So this relevance with the context and the impact on our own experience seems to be fundamental.
I will try and answer this question. How should your proposal impact you, and how should it impact your community? I think that's what the question was. Well, you're right. You're kind of it's that picture that I showed at the beginning about the world, the individual, the idea, and then the art. Okay, the art is happening because you're in the world. Okay, you're in your community. Okay, so I imagine that if you're working closely with communities, that you're addressing some kind of need that exists, some kind of, perhaps tension, maybe within the community or something like that, something you wish to heal or solve, actually. So, I mean, the impact of many of these opportunities is perhaps the kind of resolutions that take place within the community that you are going to facilitate. The fact that this opportunity increases your capacity as an activator, as a cultural activator within your own environment. And I would say that I made a show that was set in a kind of limbo. It was a theater piece, but it was in a white square of light, kind of like a nowhere place, or what we would call a void. And I never really understood until a few years later why I even did that, why I had that image. And I realized that I had been processing my identity and my heritage, because I'm mixed race. And I grew up in the very north of Scotland, small community, white community, my black father, white mother, and never really quite finding a place between these two, these two societies actually. And I realized that through my dance, I was kind of interrogating how that felt and then where my place was. So I think that if you're living in such proximity to your community, you are already, just by even osmosis, absorbing what is happening around you and then responding to it. So part of your role as the artist is to make sure you're relying on your instinct. And this is why it's important to talk about your process and to inquire and to be critical about your process, because you need to sharpen your instinct, okay? So then you can learn where you need to apply your energy and your tools and your creativity. And that, if you're aware and you're already asking these questions, then I imagine that is already kind of happening, okay? So that is also an impact, okay? As you are refining your own artistic instinct and tools for inquiry, okay? I don't know, I'm hoping, does that answer the question? Ish?
Más que eso, más que responder la pregunta, porque sí
Oh,
la
you responded and more. Thank you very much. You helped me. Thank you very much for this answer.
Basically, you just keep doing what you're doing. If you're that sensitive that you can sense the needs of your community, then you're the right person to respond to it. Come on, one more question. Uno más. Let's go. Uno más.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Diana, venga.
Hello, good afternoon.
Bueno, mi pregunta está relacionada con algo que tú decías, y era el tema de
So
cuando uno
it's
hace las candidaturas o las aplicaciones,
about something you said. When we
uno detalla de manera específica el
send the
público
applications,
al alcanzar. Porque
sometimes
me queda, por ejemplo, me pasa que yo me quedo mucho en la justificación.
we don't always explain what exactly we're going to do. I sometimes spend a lot of time describing the rationale and why the community needs it and, all the context, but not exactly how I'm actually going to do it. So my question is, well, you gave us several tips to be more specific, but when I'm writing, how can I check this myself and make sure that I'm being specific enough? Because sometimes when you're writing, you sometimes can feel that you are being specific enough, but sometimes, something is missing in your proposal and you can't see it yourself. What would you advise?
Yeah, for that last part, you can always give your application to somebody who's got nothing to do with art at all and ask them, do they kind of get it? Do they feel it or something like that? That can be a really good test, because if somebody who knows nothing about your work can kind of understand what you're trying to say, then someone who works within culture should be able to kind of get even more out of it, I would hope. So you could try that. I would try. I've done that in the past. Just give it to people who've got nothing to do with dance and see if they can get it. Because actually, in the end, those are perhaps the kind of people you want to reach in the first place. They're going to be the people in the audience. It's not going to be the funder, sadly, in the audience. It's going to be the member of the public or the member of the community or something like that. So perhaps just giving it to them and seeing what they say and taking that feedback. I want to ask you a question, actually. Do you daydream?
Sí.
No? Sí, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yep. So a lot of artists I think this is what I suspect. Okay, a lot of artists do know how they will do something, right? Somebody's process might just be, I listen to music, and then I imagine shapes, and then I try and recreate those shapes with my body, and then I try and put, maybe 10, 11 shapes together, and then I try it with that music, and then that's my process. It might just be like, that's your process. And if that's your process, that's your process. It's about being authentic. And when I say daydream, I would bet that sometimes when you daydream, you're thinking about your work, right? You're processing your work. You don't just work on your work when you go to the studio. You work on your work when you sit in the bus. You work on your work when you're at work. You work on your work when you're in the kitchen making food. And it's that daydreaming, okay, which is you thinking about how you might manifest this idea. So I would say the next time you're daydreaming is to maybe pay a slightly more attention to what that looks like. And then maybe try and think about how you would describe it. You don't have to start writing it down, first of all. You could just think about how I might describe it, okay? How the urge, right? The feeling, the urge to sort of tackle this idea, to sort of move this idea from that's in your head out into the space. Like, what direction is that urge kind of taking you in? What is it telling you to do? I mean, I would bet 100% that is happening. It's happening, right? It's like ideas are getting pulled out, like getting pulled out of your body. That's what it's like for an artist, The idea is bubbling up in here, and it's trying to come out somewhere, okay? And it's just about trying to pay a bit more attention to what that actually looks like. Okay, I think daydreaming is a really important pastime for an artist, because it's in those moments you are figuring it out. Okay, and then when you get into the studio, that little daydream will help you make the leap from what's inside your head to what's in the space. Okay, so it's practice. Okay, you're not maybe going to get it tomorrow, but yeah, when you daydream, when you're thinking about your work, that's you thinking about how you're going to do it. Okay, hope that helps. Monica. Mónica, let's go.
Mónica, ya puedes hablar, ya te autorizamos.
Buenas noches, ¿me escuchan?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
¿Me escuchan? Buenas noches. Sí, Mónica. Buenas noches. Yo soy la coordinadora del grupo de danza
The coordinator
Santander, Colombia.
of Danza Villanueva, and it focuses on people with disabilities.
La persona que está dando la conferencia, cuando escucho la cumbia, la música colombiana.
And I'm totally agree with what you have said. When I listen to the cumbia, I can see the steps in my mind, and that's what keeps me alive.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Right. It's happening. Right. It's happening. It's it's living. It's living inside you. Right. That's why you're all here, man. Because something is living inside of you. Right. So you just need to take the the focus and onto that. Okay. It's there. And it's there, and it's rich, and it's beautiful. It's like that bulb, the bulb that's just, but it's inside of you, right? And it's just about trying to catch it in the moment. And that's practice. Okay. And that is some of the work you have to do, I think, personally. ¿Más preguntas? ¿O no? I'm here for preguntas.
Bueno, creo que Mónica tiene otra pregunta.
I
Y si
think
quiere,
Monica has another question, and that would be the last question. Then we will have a short break,
hacemos un break de unos 10 minutos.
and we will begin
¿Te parece, Tony?
the practical part. Do you agree, Tony?
Dianita, Diani, también tenías una pregunta.
Well, we can do both. Let's do both questions. I'm here. We'll take questions.
Ok. Entonces, si quieres, Mónica, dale.
Monica, you have the floor.
¿Va Mónica de nuevo o voy yo?
Creo que bajo la mano.
Is it
pero-
Monica again or me? Asks Tiana.
Buenas
Go
noches.
that anyone, someone.
Tengo que disculparme por la hora de conectarme, pero la verdad estuve bastante ocupada en la tarde y la verdad hasta ahora me acordé de la reunión. Quisiera saber si de pronto
I just
en alguna parte o cómo será para conocerlo desde un principio. Gracias.
sorry, I couldn't be here, and I came in late. I wanted to know if this will be available as a recording.
Yep. I believe so.
Pues tengo varios, perdón, tengo varios proyectos o sea, varias ideas y proyectos por donde eso de presentarlos y
I have
ya
many ideas and projects to be presented, and I would need some guidance. Yes, all videos will be recorded, and all the content will be available for you.
Se los estaremos entregando a todos.
We will be sending it to you by email so that you can look at them and have the fresh information so that you can use it for your future projects. Tiana, you had a question? Yes, I want to ask, you gave us valuable information that we need to take into account for projects, but I want to ask you, what has helped you the most? Maybe to read a specific text. What are those things that could help us enhance the writing of a good project? Whether it is a project or a text, inspiration, a question that we ask, how can we become better writers for these projects?
Wow, that's a good question. Do you know something? I recently, in maybe like the last 2 years, started writing poetry, actually, and never used to write poetry before. I'm decent. I think I'm decent. And yeah, my writing has become really good, if I'm honest, very like descriptive and yeah, poignant and stuff. So all I can say is practice. Might sound like a bit of a cop out, but it's like I said before. Talking about your work is still work. The more you talk about your work, the closer you get to the truth about what it is you're actually wanting to explore. The truth about what it is that lies inside you is covered behind so much crap. Sorry, it's so much stuff which we acquire, through our lives. And the job of the artist is to try and peel all of that back, and then reveal the truth, if you ask me. But you can only do that by like a creative inquiry, like an inquiry. So you have to keep asking yourself, like you have to keep checking in with your your artistic vision, okay, about talking about it. One exercise that you can try, okay, is maybe what we're going to do in the next group actually, but one exercise you can try is you can write your like artistic statement, like you can write like write one paper like that, write one paper, okay, and then write half a paper, right, and then write quarter of a paper, and then write an A, and an and an and an and an until you can get your artistic statement here, like one word or a phrase or a sentence or a paragraph. And you can do that maybe, every 6 months, 2 months, something like that. And it will help you really focus on what is actually important to you. And as long as you make sure you include that, then that's a good foundation to build on.
Gracias, Tony.
De nada. Right, I think it's break time now.